Good morning and welcome into the show. It is Daniel Workman coming to you live from the Dreamadginate Sports Studios. It is 9 a.m. on the East Coast. This is your 6 a.m. super early morning wake-up call in all time zones in between and around the world. Thanks for tuning in on this Thursday morning. Coming up in a few minutes after the break, we will be joined by Patrick Hodgins. He is the head coach of Bavarian's SC men's team up in Wisconsin, and it is a very storied club. It's been around for a long time. They've had a lot of success, and especially in the amateur space. That's where they have been in their entire existence, and we're looking forward to having him on the show to talk about his experience and the club and where they are and where they hope to be and in the future. So that's coming up in just a few minutes. I wanted to open the show today talking a little bit about a word that's not really used in American soccer, and that is innovation. We are a country that has Silicon Valley, and we have created incredible companies over the decades. We are a place that people from around the world come to be a part of business and in the economy. And I've said many, many times that the American sports economy is the greatest sports economy on earth. And you can see the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, all having big presence in the country. Soccer has not been handled well enough to be in that conversation in a legitimate way. It is still not considered to be mainstream yet. And I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of innovation within U.S. soccer and the federation and the leadership. And here's what I mean by that. There have been opportunities, as we've talked about on the show many times, to really do things differently, to think outside the box, really come up with some cool, creative solutions to really not just grow the sport, but grow it exponentially. And some of those are in the realms of creating a connected system of leagues. This was talked about in the late 80s, early 90s, and there was a plan put forth to do this connected system of leagues, and unfortunately, the plan got hijacked. The plan by Werner Fricker, president of U.S. Soccer at the time, and the country has never really recovered from that missed opportunity of innovation. And it's a shame because it's really that's part of our culture. That's part of the DNA of this country, is to think outside of the box, to have this entrepreneurial spirit, this spirit of innovation. Sometimes necessity forces us to come up with solutions, things that we may not normally want to do or think about doing. We get forced into a situation where we have to do them in order to try to create a successful outcome. And we all know what's going on in the world with COVID-19 and the pandemic, and it's forced our entire lives to come to a halt. We kind of hit pause on life in many ways for many people, and especially sports. And so in that, it's created a lot of tricky situations, some hardships, trying to figure out logistics. And in the case of the sporting landscape, I think it also gives us some opportunities. And one of those opportunities is an opportunity to do something like what the NWSL and Major League Soccer are both looking at. And that is, hey, we're going to just look at an option of bringing teams to a central location. That way we feel like we can do a a better job of reducing potential outbreak of COVID-19 to try to keep the players more healthy by not having them travel as much, that they can all be in kind of one location, and then we just play matches, almost like a World Cup kind of feeling, but not traveling to multiple venues. And look, I think in a time where you may not be able to play in front of fans for a long time, and you know that travel is an issue, just from a logistics standpoint, not even just a health standpoint. It's not a bad idea to have that conversation. And the NWSL is looking at Salt Lake City. I've visited those facilities there in Harriman and in Salt Lake City, and it would be I think a pretty good setup for the NWSL. It could definitely handle those teams coming into town and training, housing, etc. And it could make for a pretty interesting kind of tournament for the NWSL, and get their games with their TV deal with CBS. It would give them the ability to kind of, set up shop in one place. And so that would also lower some of their production budgets and production costs. So some of that makes sense. That's some innovative thinking. And I think that should be encouraged. I think that's a good idea. If you can't get to the fans and it's not a good thing for health and safety, then look, this is one of those things of thinking outside the box. I think we need more of this in American soccer, not less. And Major League Soccer is having the same kind of conversations about Orlando and Vegas and a few other places that they've looked at. And I think everything has to be on the table when we're talking about coming up with solutions. There's a lot of things going on. The USL is trying to figure out, how to stay afloat, how to keep their teams and their team owners afloat, and the players are negotiating at the same time, with the collective bargaining agreement. So there's some back and forth on that, and they're trying to come up with some innovative ways to keep the league viable and really try to set it on a path for growth, to go beyond the level of where it is. And so, that's taking some outside of the box thinking. The NWSL's having to make some, considerations, and the NWSL players are having to make some considerations as well, and trying to figure out some things. Same with Major League Soccer. And this is happening around the world. Everyone's having to adjust. We're all having to kind of figure this thing out as we go. And one of the things I thought was pretty cool, is something that I saw last night from a Danish club, AGF Aarhus, and they have decided to give free tickets, and they're going to put up screens with cameras around their stadium, since the fans cannot attend the matches, and allow fans to watch on Zoom the match and be able to kind of make their voices heard and give a different experience for the players as well as for those fans as well. I look, would we rather be in the stadium together? Sure. Absolutely. But I think this is a really cool thing that they're going to try out. And I think more innovation in American soccer, more innovation across the sporting landscape is a good thing. And I would hope that we all encourage more and more of that innovation from all sectors, because it's not just COVID-19, but it's also how do we make American soccer the best that it can be. And we've got to think outside of the current setup, the current system. It's not getting it done. It's not reaching every community. It's not connecting every community. And so innovative thinking, outside of the box thinking, creative problem solving thinking is necessary to do that. And I hope that we see more of it. Speaking of that outside of the box thinking, this whole company, ducticbrand.com, is an outside of the box thinker. They're always coming up with new ideas, and you should check them out at ducticbrand.com. Check them out today at ducticbrand.com, DUKTIG brand.com. Place an order. When you do, use promo code DWShow. You'll get 10% off of that order at ducticbrand.com. We'll be right back with Patrick Hodgins of Bavarians SC. Welcome into the show. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we are joined by Patrick Hodgins. He is the head coach of Bavarians SC up there in Wisconsin. Patrick, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
So give us a little bit of background about this club. If you've paid any attention to adult amateur soccer in this country, it's a name that continually comes up as a contender every year. It's a competitive, seems to be a well-run, and since you're the coach, we'll say well-coached team. That's obviously doing a lot on the field. Tell us a little bit about the club itself. What's the history behind the club?
Sure. The club was founded in 1929, mainly by German immigrants that were coming over here and established the roots in the club. So last year we celebrated our 90th anniversary as a club. We take a lot of pride in that. Through the decades, it's had its up and downs, but for the most part, it's been highly successful. Whether it's been winning, local championships, state championships, regional championships, or there are 8 national championships.
So in terms of the level of play, what leagues, just for the audience sake, what leagues are you guys playing in currently? And where are you getting your players from to play, with your teams?
Sure. So currently we play in the UPSL, United Premier Soccer League. We play in their Midwest conference. We've been in that league since, I believe, 2018 was our first year in the UPSL. We've done very well in that league. We've won our division the last 2 years. We won our conference the last 2 years. 2018, we won the spring national championship. And then last year, 2019, we lost in the national semifinal for the UPSL. Our players come from mainly the Metro Milwaukee area. We have a group of guys, between like 25 and 32 that make up the vast majority of our team, 3/4 of our team. And then we fill it with a quarter of college kids from various Division 1, 2, and 3 programs from Wisconsin. We have good relationships with the University of Wisconsin, Marquette University, UW-Milwaukee, and then some other schools that our youth players will go out to and play and then come back for the summer. So we really try to take care of those kids as they come back.
So with the success that you guys have had on the field, do you think that's attributed to some of the history of the club? Is it the style of play, the players that are available? You know, what would you attribute the success that you guys have had, at least in the past few years, for the club?
Yeah, I think the last few years, it's really been our group of guys. We have a really special group of players. It's really led by 3 ex-pros, that, seen it, done it, can really lead our guys on the field. Those guys really set the tone for everybody else. And then we've been really fortunate to add talent as we go. So, the more we win, championships and the more exposure we get, it kind of casts a wider net of players that we can get into our program. But I have to give a lot of credit to our guys. Our training sessions are intense. They get after each other. It's really tougher than some of the matches we play, and that's not, to discredit anybody, but everyone's always fighting for a spot in the team, and that leads to guys wanting to perform their best.
There's something to be said about sporting merit and competition, and even within the club context, like having players competing for those spots, it makes you want to bring your A game, every day to training. The Last Dance, the Bulls documentary with MJ and all of that, been airing for the last few weeks with ESPN. One of the things I knew about Jordan was his competitive challenges to his teammates, about making them rise to the occasion. And if you couldn't rise, he was like, I got no use for you. You can just sit on the bench or go to another team. But
Yeah.
that level of, accountability, expectation. And one of the things he said during that documentary that really stood out to me is, I never asked of my teammates something I wasn't already doing or was willing to do. And I think that's a key point that you bring up about these guys. They show up to training, competing. They want it. They're looking for a spot. They're wanting to earn their spot. And quality attracts quality. So,
Yeah.
it seems like you guys have been doing a good job of that, building that environment, for the club, and it's showing on the field as well. Give us a little bit of the connection with the community. Like, how do you guys go about trying to build community support and really connect with your local context, your local city and community?
Sure. So that's actually for us one of the areas that I wouldn't say like struggle, but it's one of the areas that we need to improve upon, in all honesty. And it really comes down to the fact that our men's team is attached to a youth club. The youth club competes with other youth clubs in the areas for players, or for coaches, and sometimes it leads to people not wanting to support us because they might belong to a different club, and they see that their club is their loyalty to that specific youth club. And I completely understand that. I think what people miss, though, is that a lot of our guys have come up playing through different youth clubs. It's not just an exclusive, hey, you played Bavarian's youth, so you're going to play for our men's team. Our men's team is made up of the best players that we can find and that work for us. And like you said, through sporting merit, those players will play. And I think that's the thing that's really missed in the community, as our guys embrace representing Milwaukee. We embrace representing Wisconsin. But sometimes it's not always reciprocated.
So give us a little bit of background. Milwaukee is not talked about in American soccer circles as a hotbed, right? I mean, you hear the typical Southern California, maybe Northern California. Sometimes you hear about Texas and some other places, but you don't hear Milwaukee come up very often as like, hey, you got to go to Milwaukee to find the next player. And that's not to say, and that's no diss on Milwaukee. I'm just stating like that's kind of the general talk around American soccer. So for the audience, give us a little bit of, Milwaukee soccer scene. What's it like? Like how many clubs are in the area? Like, give us a kind of a picture of the soccer ecosystem and landscape that you guys are existing in each and every day.
Yeah. So I think Milwaukee and Wisconsin soccer overall is overlooked. If you look history-wise, whether it's Bavarians or otherwise, guys like Bob Gansler have coached the national team and grew up in the city, grew up a Bavarian. Jimmy Banks grew up in the city, played for the national team. Jesse Marsh grew up down the road in Racine, and now look at what he's doing at Salzburg. And there's so many players have come through here that have gone on to professional careers that may not reach the highest levels and the most notoriety, but they've come through here and they've had really good MLS or USL careers. Kids like Ethan Finley and Jimmy Banks. Jimmy Banks' son, plays for Forward Madison now, and there's a lot of players that come through Milwaukee, and I do think the kids here overall get overlooked, whether that's nationally from the youth ranks all the way up. There's a variety of clubs that are doing a really good job, producing players that are going on to, college careers, professional careers, and sometimes the door may not always be open for them. Regarding the clubs, it's pretty competitive. I'd say probably there's, 10 to 15 clubs in Metro Milwaukee that serve, different types of kids, different types of communities. So there's always competition for, players and spots in leagues, which I think drives everybody to, up their game to be better and to have, a really good experience for their players.
Yeah, I when you look at the state of Wisconsin, you obviously, know about the Packers and like Milwaukee Bucks, you have the Milwaukee Brewers, professional sports now with USL League One with, Forward Madison, you've got a little bit of the professional scene there in Wisconsin, but with that kind of level of, having the NBA, Major League Baseball, as well as the NFL in the state of Wisconsin, the fact that soccer is still somewhat overlooked within the American soccer landscape is a little bit of a head scratcher. I know when Eric Winalda was running for president in 2018, Wisconsin in general was a state that would come up in conversations as why are we not seeing more engagement, not from Wisconsin's side of that conversation, but from everyone else. Like, why isn't that part of, because like you guys with the Bavarians and as I mentioned, there is a little bit of a legacy there in history with producing players and coaches, from Wisconsin, why that's not a bigger or considered a bigger hotbed of soccer has been a little bit of a head scratcher, and really kind of leads me to, zoom out and look at the system in general. It's why, like, just like with your training sessions, and just like having 10 to 15 clubs in Milwaukee, for example, why competition and having access to that competition is so important, because you allow cities clubs within those cities to do something from the bottom up, not just, what we deem as, hey, you're good enough, right? Top down kind of gatekeeper mentality. When you look at, Bavarians, getting back to the club itself, when you look at, each season kind of building off of the previous and putting together teams and looking at schedules and taking into account, training sessions and the climate and the seasons up there, what are some major factors for a team that's, as a northern team in the country? What are some factors that you guys have to take into account in terms of planning and preparing for a season and when you can play and finding opponents, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest thing we have, obviously, is the winters. Starting late December through early March, it's really difficult to get on an outdoor field, if not impossible in most situations. So whether it's just us renting, indoor space, and just using your typical indoor field on every Sunday, we just try to get the guys out as much as we can, to keep them getting touches, that repetition, just so when we are able to start playing in March, that they're not, too rusty, that they're not really working on getting their touch back. We might have to work on some fitness things, but it's just making sure that they're mentally and physically ready to go once our preseason starts in March. We try to build our preseason through March and April with playing as many college teams as we can play. Like I said, we have good relationships with a lot of the local schools, so we try to get on their, spring season game list so we can get in some matches and be ready to go once our league season starts in May, June, July, and then into hopefully, if we've done well, we're still playing in August when, nationals for the competitions roll around. We'll try to let the guys decompress a little bit, take some time off, spend some more time with their families. We'll lose some kids back to their universities. And then, we'll just try to, play once or twice, in trainings during the fall season and then start the cycle all over again.
In terms of, taking into account the climate, there's a conversation about scheduling and you have the European leagues that generally run fall to spring. And here in America, we run things backwards. We'll run like March to like November, which up north may be great to play in June and July. In the South, and you spent some time in Florida before in the summers, not so good. You feel like you need to run with an oxygen pack on your back, and some kind of dehumidifier, to deal with the humidity. So we have a big, wide ranging climate situation with the U.S. We're a continent-sized country. We do have, places like Milwaukee that are weather-wise are just completely different than other places in the country like Southern California or Florida, or, so on and so forth. So looking at scheduling, one of the things that I have looked at in like how can you do fall to spring and how can you run things to basically try to get everything to finish up, in May, which is generally what happens around the world. I started doing a lot of research about, Scandinavian leagues. Obviously, winter's an issue, and looking at what they do, and then also looking at like Germany and some of what they do with the Bundesliga, and I feel like you could set a fall to spring calendar system in America pretty easily if you do a couple things, and that is first and foremost, start with what I call kind of your anchor date, and for the purposes of this, it'd be like finals. Our anchor dates are going to be in May, like cup finals, any playoff finals, everything's going to be in May. let's work back from that. So that's going to be kind of begin with the end in mind, right? And looking at Scandinavia as a inspiration for this, a lot of their leagues will kick off their fall seasons like 1st of July. So they'll have a very, very short, window in June, and then it's really kind of a preseason. They kick off their season in July, and then they have a pretty long, extended winter break to deal with some of their winter issues. Would something like that be workable for a club in Wisconsin that was playing in a scheduled format of, let's say fall to spring, where you did have kind of June is kind of a somewhat down month of preseason, and then season kickoff, 1st of July roughly, and then running through with some kind of winter break finishing in May? Is that something that you guys could work around in a scenario like that, where you did have the bulk of your break time in the winter and not in the summer, but still finish up with a signature final in May?
Yeah, I mean, I think from an adult perspective, we could try to make it work. I think if you're understanding of some of our issues weather-wise, and we might have to, travel a little bit further south, whether that's, Indiana or it's a parts of Illinois, or, just a little bit like that, to get in some games earlier in maybe late February. I think that would be doable. It would just take some work for everybody to be on the same page on how that's really gonna get done. But I think if you sat down and really asked people, what would make sense if people could do it, I think we could get enough soccer people together to figure out the specifics of it to make it work. To your point, last year we played, the UPSL semifinal outside Dallas, Texas, and it was over 100 degrees. I mean, the conditions on a turf field were rough, for our guys. And
so brutal.
But both teams had to deal with it, so no excuses there or anything like that. But it didn't make for the best environment for us to play that match.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few medical professionals as well as former players who said, give me cold weather over, 100-degree, hot, humid weather any day of the week. I can always throw on some extra clothes. There's nowhere to go.
That's true. So true.
When you're dealing with the heat and heat stroke and things like that, it's actually to me, a lot more dangerous looking at some of the heat issues than the cold. It's certainly an inconvenience and something that, like you said, would have to be strategized to make it to work, properly for everyone. But I do think those are hurdles that can be overcome if we want it to, as a country, to say, hey, we're going to make May our signature finals. And the reason why I look at that is a couple things. When you get into the highest levels, you really want to engage in the transfer markets at the highest levels of a system, right? So whether that's bringing in players or sending out players that are developed and produced, that summer transfer window is the biggest transfer window in the calendar year, especially with Europe being the main beneficiary of alignment for that. You do have a month in January for transfers, but when they're in the middle of their season, and then you have all of American leagues basically in the middle of their season, while you have a 3-month transfer window in the summers, it doesn't necessarily work out as nicely and neatly as some may think that, well, it's a transfer window. They can just MLS or USL or somebody else can sell a player or bring a player in. And when you're in the middle of the season, that's why you don't see a ton of blockbuster moves in January in Europe. It's the middle of the season. They'd much rather handle that business in the summer.
Right.
And so I think for that reason, it would just be, it would be good at the top to be in alignment. But I think a bigger thing outside of the player health and safety that we just, referenced is really kind of, taking May and making it soccer month.
Sure.
where March Madness is, college football and the BCS and the championships and the bowl games are all in that kind of December, early January window. The Super Bowl, the NBA's finishing up their finals in June, Major League Baseball finishing up in October. It's a very crowded and congested fall when you have the World Series and Major League Baseball. You have the college football and the NFL in full swing in the fall going into the winter versus May, where it's, on maybe not this year with coronavirus and you're not getting much sports on TV except maybe the Bundesliga that's back right now. But, you turn on Memorial Day and you might get a baseball game or two, but like there's really nothing going on. Other than I think it's the national championships for lacrosse. And the only reason why I know is because there's just not a lot on TV on Memorial Day. And so I think the month of May makes a lot of sense and to kind of work back from that to make it work. To me would be a good thing for all levels of the sport. Not just, talking at a high level with player transfers in and out at, say, the Major League Soccer level, but just for everyone to be able to have this month that we say, hey, like this is soccer month in America kind of thing. And then, obviously working backwards where if you were in the South, for example, you may not want your league kicking off until middle to end of August. And then playing through the winter with no break because you don't need to. You're fine playing in that weather because it probably feels better than August. Where you guys would need to start earlier and more of a Scandinavian style calendar so that you could take a longer break and still come back and be, ready to go for the May, wind up to a season. So, I feel like that's something that a lot of people just don't, they hear fall to spring is like the snow, and then there's just kind of this freak out. And I'm like, there are ways, and it's really you guys that are the most have the most things to work through from a logistics standpoint. It's really easy to pull off if you're talking about a league that has a bigger travel footprint, because if you're a professional soccer team in the North, you can go play in a dome or go play in the South in the winter, no big issues, for the most part. Right. It's you guys who may be playing in a league that have a smaller travel footprint where, we have an away game, but they're still in the snow too. And that's where you have to really look at Scandinavia and other countries like that as inspirations for models, to create that. So, I just think it's a conversation that we need to have. I think it's easy way for us to bring in better TV money that could filter down to clubs like yours playing in a American soccer to have access to more revenue in the system. And I think the TV money would be higher by having the ability to really just kind of, if you had all these amateur championships and professional championships all taking place in the month of May, just seems to me like a really good alignment for all of the leagues where, as you mentioned, you guys were playing in August with the UPSL. You had the USL in October. You had Major League Soccer who used to go into December and then decided they wanted to try to end up in November. Of course, this year with coronavirus, we have no idea where anything's going to end up. But, I just think it would be good to get some alignment in the system from a scheduling standpoint would be helpful. When you are, putting on your coaching hat and you're trying to, create the best team that you can put on the field, what are some things that you're focusing on that allows you to have the success you guys have had on the field?
So I think first and foremost for me, it's how the guys interact with each other. There's just some groups that, on the field, they just work well off of each other. They have that chemistry. We have a group of brothers. Two of them, they're our two best attacking players. It's Braden and Logan Andrick. They were Division III college players. So by no means do they play at the highest level of any of the players that we have, but they're our two most dynamic attacking players that we have on our roster. And they play really well together. They've played a lot of games with each other, and there's certain things that they do really well. And because of the things that they do, we need to fill in a couple other guys that are more maybe just like a ball winner, or that'll cover the space that he's going to vacate, because those two like to roam a lot on the field to find the ball, to do their own type of thing, where it's not really a positional, they're not that positional orientated on how they play. We're not like, hey, you're the left winger, you stay over there and hopefully we get you the ball. It's, hey, go find it, make something happen for us. And a lot of our stuff goes through them. So then we try to build a system around that, so we have outside backs that like to get up and play to fill the space that they're vacating. We have two really good center backs that like to, control the match, are good in the air, good ball winners. And then we have, a 6 and an 8 that, will do the dirty work, and they'll put in those shifts for you, and they'll make those tackles so everyone else can kind of play off of each other.
If you were to identify some coaching inspirations for you, whether it's tactically, whether it's man management, what are some models that you kind of look at as inspirations for how you coach?
Sure. So for us, we play 4-3-3. We play 4-3-3 against everybody and anybody. We like to play attacking style football. We do have a good defensive back line, that can kind of hold it down for us, but we like to really push, the tempo and get after people and score goals, in its simplistic form. From the coaching side of things, I think the man management and the player management is the most important thing. Like you talked about the Last Dance and things like that, where the way that Phil Jackson can kind of handle Dennis Rodman, to me, is an art form, where I always believe that you don't treat everybody the same, but you treat them all equal. And that might seem like it doesn't make sense, but to me, it does, where we've had pro guys that have seen it, done it, and you know what, if they miss a training session, it's not a big deal, because I know what I'm going to get from him when it comes to him playing. There's other kids that are younger that may have more to prove, that, you know what, hey, you might need to be at all these training sessions to show the group that you belong, because we know that that other player who had the pro career, that he does belong. And that's the biggest thing for me, is just managing our guys, trying to be upfront with them about expectations and what we need from them. And they really hold each other accountable. It's, they want to win. We're here to win. We organize teams to win. And they really hold each other accountable when it comes to the bottom line and how we're playing and what their expectations are.
So would you say that you're more a Pep or a Klopp guy in terms of your man management style?
I'm definitely not like the real, tactical, like X's and O's. I think some of it can kind of be overblown. I think it's good to have, a strategy for your team going into a game, but I can't tell you one time where I've necessarily changed our tactics or our process against an opponent. I think we're going to do what we're going to do, and hopefully we can do it better than the opponent. I think both of those guys are extremely good coaches, but I just like the way that Klopp interacts with his players. And you can tell when those guys play that they have a genuine love and admiration for that man. So.
Yeah, I think that I think Pep is a mad genius. Tactically, like I just think the guy's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think Klopp is the best man manager I've ever seen in soccer. I mean, the guy, you can see the players just believe that they can walk into hell with water pistols and put out the fire. I mean, it's just, and they come back out of the fire and they're like giving him giant bear hugs, and he's like, running around with them like, we did it, and so it's so cool to see. Because I think both guys are brilliant. I think, and that's not to say Klopp's not tactically a phenomenal coach. I think he is. Slightly different style than Pep, but I think they're both. I'd take them both in a heartbeat. But I love, like you said, the way that Klopp interacts with his players, and really that feeling of belief that he's able to give to his players it's a key thing. And I think at the youth levels, it's probably not, that psychosocial emotional support factor is probably not emphasized enough in youth soccer in America. We get into like mechanics of like making sure we do this right or making sure this, and sometimes you just need a coach that's like loud and running around and high-fiving his kids, and they're just having a blast, and we're like, don't do that. Don't do that. This is, and it's like, it's not golf, bro. It's, did you watch Klopp run and bear hug Allison in the middle of that, Everton match? Whenever they score at the very end, they're like, oh my God, we did it. Like, I mean, it, like, that's awesome. Like, like share the joy, like, make it contagious. So, I love that you went there with Klopp. I think that was a really good guy to pick as somebody that inspires you.
I think in a lot of ways, we get kids or, players when they're 25, 26, or even in college, a lot of their tendencies as players have already been, developed in a lot of ways. And it's really hard based on how much we train to go back and tell them like the way they approach the game is wrong, or that, hey, you should pass the ball a different way, or it's not technically correct. Those tendencies for those players have already been developed. For me, it's just about developing those relationships with our guys to make them all feel included in what we're doing. Like they have a voice in the process. And I think the more you do that, whether it's with younger kids or older adults, they buy in and they feel invested with what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Last question for you. If you guys were in a system that had the opportunity to build beyond just, an amateur level, that you could win your national championship, advance, promote, etc., how would that change the way you guys operate and make plans and dream and work on Bavarians as a project?
Yeah, I think that's a really, it's an interesting question for me to answer. And the biggest thing for us, like right now, is we run off of, sponsorship dollars. Our team isn't funded by, the youth club. We have our own adult sponsors for our teams that brings in revenue that helps us cover our expenses. So our guys aren't asked to pay dues or, to have to pay money out of their pockets. If the system was open where there was another level to us, I think obviously it might open up more investors or more sponsorship opportunities. It's just really a hard question for me to really give you a very good answer on, just because of the history of the club. It's been independently, owned and operated since 1929. So like, we don't really have a group of investors that backs us or is looking for a financial return or anything like that. We'd obviously really like the opportunity to play, more and more of those teams, and to play, USL teams, or even get the opportunity to play MLS teams as we go up the pyramid. But I just don't know how it would impact us, from a day-to-day, like from a business perspective.
Well, I think you made your answer. Just you got there in a roundabout way, but I do think it would change. What you guys did in terms of access to more sponsored dollars, and whether that meant outside investment or not. I do think there would be an even greater sense of purpose to showing up to training and to play, because there's an even bigger nugget that you're playing for beyond just even a championship, which is a big thing in and of itself. But to even have that be the access point to bigger competition and more eyeballs and more support, et cetera. The important thing about your answer that I think a lot of people miss, and I think we've missed from a federation, viewpoint and standpoint here, is that instead of trying to, micromanage every solution or every situation, to dictate exactly what Bavarians has to do X, Y, or Z in this format or whatever. It's more about the idea of allowing a club like Bavarians to, make your own destiny and organically figure it out. Have those conversations internally. What do we want to do? How do we want to approach this? Is this a prize that we want to seek? And if so, what does that look like? And what could that mean for us from a revenue standpoint? What could that mean for us from, attracting better players standpoint? I mean, there's all these organic kind of, like, it's not just a simple, like, short black and white conversation. It's more about, like, hey, it's we the people, it's power to the people, it's opportunity and access, and you figure it out. You decide what matters, most to you and for you, and how you want to approach it, rather than like saying, okay, hey, it's kind of like, to the league conversation we were having about the calendar system up north. One way of doing things would be differently, done differently at that level than it would be done down south, where you wouldn't want to be playing, in a July and August, but you'd want to be playing in the colder months in the South. Same thing when you get into the club level of a meritocracy of sport, is that you let these clubs figure out what they want to dream and how they want to dream and what level they want to dream, and then what they're able to then execute on those dreams, because everything that a club sees on the field, and I think this is one of the big misunderstandings about sporting merit, is people say, well, you can't have a team playing in the first division playing in a local city park. Like, you can't do that. And that's not ever going to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that organically the system will always, like, correct itself. So if you're a club and you're on the rise, in order to keep those players, you're going to have to get them in a better environment than a city park. You're going to have to get them better accommodations, or they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to get eyeballs on them, so bigger clubs are going to come for them anyway. So the odds of you taking, like, hey, here's my group of 25, 30 guys, and we started in our local park, and in 5 years we're hosting MLS matches in our city park, that's never going to happen.
Right.
Never going to happen. And so, but what it does do is it allows these clubs to organically grow as they go. So it's like, hey, here's our level right now today. Here's the kind of guys we're attracting. Here's our sponsorship dollars, et cetera. When we get to the next level, it's like, we started by laying a foundation for a house. Now we're going to put up the walls. Now we're going to add the roof. Now we're going to add the drywall and the paint and the furniture, et cetera. That's what happens organically. It's not forced. where we create something out of nothing. It's like, hey, show up. And we're like, we don't know you. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're a pro team now, but where were you 5 years ago? Like, we never heard of you before. That's different when you see a team, and let's say, you know, that just hypothetically that we were in a system where Bavarians could grow and take advantage of your national championships. And all of a sudden Bavarians you guys are working your way up the ladder. It's not a overnight, you know, sensation. You're not like this one-hit wonder artist that showed up out of nowhere. It's like,
Sure.
no, those guys are us. Like they're from our city. They're part of our city. We've seen them from the beginning. And I think what it ultimately does is part of that organic process. Not only is that happening inside of the club, and you're having to continue to improve and get better to keep up and keep going and going up and keeping your players and attracting better players, but it also organically builds deeper roots and ties into your city and your community, because they're seeing that happen as you go. It gets celebrated on the local news when Bavarians wins a national championship, and that national championship is now all of a sudden the door that opens to playing USL teams or playing Major League Soccer teams, right? And so, you know, now it's like, hey, everybody knows who our players are, because, you know, they just got into the big show here. And so I think there's just a lot of, you know, color to that conversation that goes beyond, you know, what is to me often a very kind of short, you know, hypothetical situation that, and honestly, we just don't see it. We don't know what we don't know here in America. You go to Europe and you see it. You can feel it. You know, I have had conversations in Europe with amateur clubs who dream of playing professionally, and just that dream alone is worth a few beers of conversation for them. Like, it's just part of the conversation, and they know it, and they'll look back to the glory days when they were a division or two higher, and they've fallen on harder times, and you know, they're still around. They're still loyal members of the club, but they wish, you know, they were back where they used to be. And that's just all part of that deeper connection. And I think it would help so many clubs in this country to have that type of real, authentic, deep, rooted connection in their communities. So look, I appreciate you coming on the show and spending time. Best of luck when everything finally settles down and you guys get back on the field. I know between, you know, your day job and your coaching gig here, you're waiting on a lot to reopen and get back to normal. But when it does, best of luck to that. How can people connect with Bavarians and even connect with you and learn more about what you're doing and learn more about your club?
Sure. We have a website people can reach us on. I think it's just Bavarian Soccer Club. We're on Twitter, Facebook. My email address, it's patrickhodgins4@gmail.com if people want to reach out. And we can be happy to interact with whoever. If clubs even have questions about, growing or anything like that, we're always here to help. So.
Well, we appreciate your time. Like I said, stay safe, and hopefully sooner rather than later, you can get back out on the field and start trying to win another championship for Bavarians and keep building on that rich legacy. So thanks for joining the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too.
No one, no man, no woman, no child should ever have to drink green water with bugs, with algae, with disease in it. Bad water and a lack of toilets kills more people than all the wars in the world. We know how to bring clean drinking water right now to every single person on earth. And when you can bring water into communities, it truly transforms them. It changes everything. Or you could know that you'd made a difference. You could know that you had truly impacted the life of a family, of a community, of a region. There was either clean water or there wasn't. We believe in a world where every single person has clean and safe water to drink, and we will continue fighting until that happens.
Thanks for watching the show today. We appreciate it. As always, you can watch at danielworkman.com/watch. DMs are open on Twitter, so if you got any questions or thoughts or ideas, hit me up. I would love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see everyone again tomorrow.